let me just set the table a little bit, okay? So I was talking to Chris this morning, and my husband, about 6 years ago, founded a men's retreat called Soul Degree. I think a lot of you know the story about the restaurant businesses tanking and our life savings going down the drain with it. After the restaurant business tanked, you took a couple years to really figure out what you were going to do next with your life and to heal a lot of went down for you personally in the wake of that experience of launching a business, pouring your heart and soul into it, and then it not working. And one of the things that you've done is you've started a men's retreat called Soul Degree, where you take men out into the woods, and it's a 5-day experience that includes yoga and journaling and guided meditation and all kinds of coaching. And so you've got one of your men's retreats coming up, and you never, ever talk about what happens at them. You come back and you're completely transformed. And I really respect the fact that you don't share anything because it's all confidential. But I asked you this morning if you would just tell me, like, what are the themes that come up when you go and do a retreat with 5 men or you're coaching your male clients? And you said there are 5 very distinct themes that all the men that you work with are struggling with. And when you told them to me, I was shocked. And I said, everybody needs to hear this. So that's what I want to talk about. Okay.
Yes.
So can we go through them? What are the 5 things that all the men that you know and the men that have been on your retreats and the men that you coach, what are they struggling with but not telling the people in their life that they're struggling with?
Well, I think one of the things that we were talking about this morning is just that guys don't put themselves first. Everyone else comes first. And that manifests or shows up often, at least with many of the men that I've engaged with, is them losing complete sight of what they need or want for themselves, just because the muscle of looking out for themselves is completely lost. And it's all about everyone else.
When you first shared that in the kitchen this morning, I looked at you with like my eyes crossed, because I had never in a million years thought that a dude feels like everybody else comes first, because every woman that I know says that everybody in her life comes first. And so it never even occurred to me that the guys walking around feel as though everybody else in the family or with their roommates or with their significant other, that they come before them.
I think they're putting what they perceive to be the needs of the people around them first, and which means they're pouring themselves into work or, other obligations, if you will, and losing track of what genuinely I have guys that have come on retreat and they haven't really even conceived of a hobby, much less, what's important to them.
You also explained that you have this exercise that you do with your coaching clients and that you guys do on retreat that really illustrates what you're talking about. Can you explain that?
Well, it's just that. It's a conversation about where there has been neglect in focusing on yourself and the things that you find meaning and value in, which, again, like I said, I think it gets lost in the shuffle. So I've asked guys to take out a piece of paper and write down specifically what they want and need, and many just draw a blank, can't fill the page.
Nothing?
No, they actually have to step away from the exercise and even give it a day or two before they really feel like, haven't really thought about that before.
That's a layer deeper than I think what most women struggle with. Because I think at least the women that I talk to and my friends and listeners to this show that write in, you have a sense of what you need to do. to put yourself first. You have a sense of what you want in terms of your own needs, and there's a longing for it. But to have an experience of life where you have so put everybody else before you that you don't even know or feel like your needs matter enough that you can't even put them on a piece of paper? Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit tough to swallow. And, with all due respect, I think that if you look at something as basic as exercise, for example, and you see a guy spending a good bit of time exercising, that's not to say that he doesn't perceive that as being a need or a want of his, but there oftentimes is still a layer of obligation. Like, I got to look good for my wife, or I got to whatever, that there's a gotta, have to. And so I'm not sure that can always fall in the appropriate category of genuinely, what do I need to feel good about myself and my life?
What's the second one?
I think people are, I'm not sure if I'd say explicitly they're lonely, but many are friendless or have lost their way in developing friendships. Again, the muscle has weakened as they have poured themselves into things like work and career and family, and God forbid they're running into health problems. I mean, all of these things sort of take precedent to cultivating real deep friendships. And so many guys, I think in general in life, I think it's particularly when you hit your 40s, 50s, I think you really have to work extra hard at cultivating and building friendship. And I'm not talking about maybe the guys that, maybe there are people in your life that have been around since middle school or high school or college, but outside of that, especially if you're somebody that's moving or changing geographies or even jobs for that matter, it can be really disruptive and be a major roadblock, and then subsequently just an excuse. And then all of a sudden the guy wakes up and is like, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of friends around me.
Wow. What about the third thing that men struggle with, but they don't really talk about? Or,
I think it's just a cultural thing, of course, that men naturally still follow that societal norm of needing to be the provider and the protector, or one and the same. And that,
you mean like make money?
It's all about making money.
How so?
Well, I think the whether they are generating the pressure upon themselves or it's coming from external forces, and I think it's probably a little bit of a mix of both, but the sense of responsibility that the more money I make, the more security and freedom and happiness I can create amongst the people around me. And so therefore, let me go back to making money. Or how do I make the money?
And is there also this pressure among guys that you're measured up based on how much money you make? Like you know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't know how much of guys are being, influenced by looking around or over their shoulder, or whether it's all self-created. That it's your own expectation level. And that was the other thing that we talked about this morning, was just that another area is I'm not good enough. I'm not living up. I'm not reaching the goal, whatever that goal is.
Well, and I can see that if you feel this sense of obligation that everybody else comes first, so much so that you're not even in touch with your own needs, and then you also have lost touch with your friends, and now you're like, my God, where did my friends go? And then you start to feel this obligation to just make money. All those things become measuring sticks where you're like, I'm just not measuring up in any of these areas. And what's interesting is that the fifth one that you said is how they ultimately end up with you as a coach or attending a retreat or being part of your online community coaching programs that you do. And I think this is an important one for everybody to hear. This is a struggle and an interest that a lot of guys aren't talking about. And what is it?
That men are seeking a deeper, more meaningful life, whatever that might mean for them. And even announcing that publicly, I think is a little tricky at times. Not because guys are not willing to admit that once they arrive at it, but I think it takes some time to arrive at that. Like, oh yeah, there's something deeper that I want to go after that I haven't yet in my life. And like I said, that means something different to every guy out there.
Well, and what's also interesting is that I think when you realize you want something deeper, it probably sets up a major conflict, because that would mean everybody else might not come first. And it also means your focus shifts from just merely providing and climbing the ladder and making money to something intrinsic and deeper that might not involve money at all.
Well, you're right. It definitely is a pendulum swing to focusing on self, which is, like we talked about, a weak muscle. But it can also imply that something is broken and needs fixing, which I think is part of what creates inertia in this conversation with guys, because they need to figure out that it's not about it's broken or, something has to change. It's about my heart talking. My soul is talking here.
What's normally talking for a
guy? How to solve the problem, how to make the buck, how to lose the pound, like how to get the girl, how to, what do my kids need? Is the car need fixing? Like, the list is long.
So's the heaviness. Oh my God. I feel bad. I have known you, honey, for 28 years. And I would say that you struggled with all of these things for a very long time. The only time that I didn't see you struggle is when you were launching the restaurant business with your best friend, Jonathan. And when it was first happening, and you were so alive and fulfilled. And then, of course, as is the case with most restaurants, it was great while it was great, and then it was horrible when it was horrible. And when you came out of that restaurant business, the story that most of our listeners know, you were a shell of the person that you are now. And you really went to work on yourself, and you were looking for a way to get together with other men and develop friendship and deeper meaning. And you worked with a therapist and you couldn't find it. So that's why you created Soul Degree. And I think it would be helpful for everybody to hear the fact that you were struggling and how you were struggling with these 5 things. And I remember a particular moment in time, it was just 3 years ago, where, do you remember what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Where I had asked you if you would be a part of a focus group for the book I was researching, The High Five Habit. And I asked you if you would please, for 5 days in a row, just add the habit of high-fiving yourself in the mirror to your morning routine. And do you remember what you said?
That it was a stupid idea.
I believe it was, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. I'm not doing it. And when we come back, because I think this is a great time to take a quick pause, I want to pick up this story because at the time, I didn't realize how lonely you were. I didn't realize how much you were still struggling. I didn't realize the sense of obligation and how you were not taking care of your own needs and how lonely you were both in our marriage and in your life. And I want to go to that moment of what happened next. And we'll tell that story when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back.
This energy.
Yeah, good energy. So I'm back with my husband, Chris.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I was just sharing with everybody that when I first stumbled upon this high five habit and I started doing it, and then I asked you if you would try it for 5 days. Do you remember that?
Definitely. And I said NFW.
Well, you did have a very deliberate, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I immediately thought it was the dumbest idea ever. I found it ludicrous, quite honestly. Let's go to the mirror. Let's high five ourselves. And this is going to solve all problems.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to solve all problems, but I know based on the research and I know based on the testimonials of 175,000 people and the testimonials that roll in every single freaking day that are so profound that when you take on this habit, it has a shocking impact on your brain and how you see yourself and the person in the mirror. And that kicks open a door to an entirely new set of habits and an entirely new possibility. And, we're laughing, but when I kept pushing you, because I'm like, dude, you're my husband. I need you to try this. I want you to take the high five challenge. I want you to do this for 5 days. You shared with me something that I didn't know. And the real reason why you thought this was stupid, when you dug a little deeper, it was really sad. And honestly, it was scary to hear as your spouse. So would you share with everybody sort of the deeper insight as to why you kind of had that reaction?
I think at the time I related to the idea of a high five to myself as being encouragement, like looking forward, the idea that you would high five yourself to inspire forward action. And yet I find that the power of that high five in the mirror is less your hand meeting the mirror and more your eyes meeting your eyes. And that's where the struggle was. Because when I took that challenge on, I remember really the high five was easy. The looking at myself in the mirror, that was not easy.
Why? Can I hold your hand?
I think it was not easy because there was so much reflection on the past. I was looking back. I was not seeing somebody that deserved a high five. I saw failure. I saw upset. I saw just not living up to the expectation that I think I had set for myself. And I'm sure that society's expectations were also influencing that. But just where I was at the time, I didn't feel like I deserved that high five. So I think that was probably the underlying reason why my reaction to the idea of doing it was, this is stupid. When the truth is that I was not happy with myself and didn't think a high five was deserved.
It's really hard to hear how long you felt that way about yourself. Because I stood next to you for years, the sink right next to you. And when I looked at you, like I saw the world's best dad, amazing husband. I saw somebody who was absolutely integral to helping me build my business. I felt grateful for you. I didn't know you thought any of those things. You just kind of put on a smile and carried on. You were so sort of stoic about it. So can you explain, because I think that there's a lot of people, especially men, that really beat the hell out of themselves when their career doesn't go how they thought it was going to go, or they get laid off, or, you know, you become an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship looks fucking glamorous. It's a bitch, especially in the restaurant business. And you had been an entrepreneur. So can you just share just a little bit of context for people so they understand like how long you would look in the mirror and see somebody that failed and why you felt that way?
Oh, it had to have been 15 years anyway.
15 years?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think it was just the unraveling of the restaurant business that was the beginning of that. I think that I'm not sure exactly when, but as you and I know, like looking back on my very colorful career, I am grateful today for all of the things that I did, but having moved through so many different roles and responsibilities and industries and companies and
job changes,
and I just never ever related to myself like I was succeeding in a professional sense. And I, of course, concluded that therein lies the source of my failure, because my job here is to be the provider, the proverbial provider, and to go, quote, make it happen. And so the discomfort with myself and my progress professionally was absolutely what I think dragged me down. And yeah, being an entrepreneur can seem glamorous. I would say that at the time when this whole thing and the High Five Challenge or the book came out, you and I we were in the throes of it. I mean, talk about just getting up and putting on your boots and just diving into the fire every day. There wasn't, at least just didn't seem like there was a moment to actually stop and acknowledge the good. And quite frankly, you weren't acknowledging me like that. You might have seen me as a good husband or father or, business partner, but those words weren't being shared between us. And so naturally, I didn't get that reinforcement verbally from you. But I also think that the being in the thick of it and running as fast and as hard as we were didn't, the idea of stopping and looking in the mirror and seeing myself truly for who I am and the good that I have done and acknowledging all the failures as being a source of powerful learning and all that stuff. Fuck that. Like I wasn't, and that's why I say, I think the hardest part was to stand in front of that mirror and see your whole self. And for guys, I think that is, for many, borderline feels impossible. Because that's what we do. We just get up, put the boots on, and go, okay, Mel needs something, the wife needs something, the kids need something, The employer needs something.
The dogs.
Okay, let me jam in a quick workout. Maybe because maybe I'm thoughtful about what my mind, body, or spirit needs, but also something that I think is an afterthought for guys. And we put everybody but ourselves first. So the act of standing in front of a mirror and high-fiving yourself and looking yourself in the eyes and saying, I love you, outlandish concept. But hugely important. And it doesn't happen unless you're sort of willing to really stop and slow down and consider that you matter more than your wife, your kids, your employer, the rest of it. And I think that's part of what has, I think maybe over the years, dragged me down, was paying zero attention to me and paying all the attention, or so I felt, on everybody outside of me.
And providing and trying to prove that you were successful and trying to earn money and live up to also your dad's expectations.
Yeah, well, if you really want to go back to the root of it all, we could be here all day. But yes, certainly growing up with a father that did what he did and accomplished what he accomplished, and even just the basics of putting on a suit and tie and packing a briefcase and catching a train and working in a high rise in Manhattan. All of those things were just visual cues of what I thought I should be doing. None of which, of course, played out, other than the occasional suit until ties and the rest of it flew out the window. But just, I wasn't being like my dad, which is what I thought I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. So you get really emotional when you talk about looking at yourself in the mirror. And I want to hear you talk more about that, because I know that it's a bunch of things that come up for you, because you're not in that place that you were in where you look in the mirror and see a failure. And you don't believe those things about yourself. And the challenge of simply standing in the mirror and looking in the eyes, I agree with you. That's the hardest part of adding this habit to your morning routine. Just put the toothbrush down and be with the person in the mirror. Look them in the eyes and don't see a reflection, see a human being who needs you. That half of men and women can't or won't look at themselves. And
it's a good point, because you can, it sounds weird, but you can look right through yourself in the mirror.
Yes.
Versus actually seeing yourself.
Yes. And if you aren't looking through yourself, a lot of us look at all the things we don't like. And so even gazing at ourselves is an act of self-criticism, because we're like, I hate my this, I hate my that, my, neck is saggy. And, you have since done a tremendous amount of therapy. You and I have done the psychedelic supervised therapies. You are in the middle of getting your master's in spiritual transpersonal psychology. You are getting your training to be a death doula and to sit with people at the end of their life. And you have also started a men's retreat called Soul Degree. And you've been leading retreats with men for 4 years, Chris. And there's a lot of emotion that comes up for you. 6 years, sorry. 6 years. Terrible wife. Can I get a high five? Cheer me on even though. Thank you. Don't let go of my hand. I want to hold your hand. You have been in the presence of so many men. And you've even had Oakley reach out to you and had you counsel some of his friends through anxiety and through issues. And I know there's a lot of emotion there. So, can you just speak to the men and the boys that may be listening, or to the people in their lives that love them, about what you've witnessed, about, the kind of coaching that you lead, the meditation circles that you lead, not like from what you want people to know about the importance of being able to look yourself in the mirror and learn how to take actions to truly support and love yourself, and that this is a very foreign concept for boys and men.
Yeah, I think that I often talk about Soul Degree as being a space that I hold for men that allows them to slow down, when the truth of the matter is it's in the slowdown that all of those beautiful things can take place. And I think that the reason why there's a lot of emotion there for me, particularly with guys, is that, and I speak to all the partners and the spouses, the people that have sons and fathers and male counterparts, is that
Brothers.
Yes, it is the responsibility of the individual to be able to look in the mirror and see the whole person, foibles and all. But why there is a lot of emotion is because, in my experience in sitting with men, very rarely do men feel truly seen and heard. And that's not
on an emotional level. So let's go back to the mirror and what you experienced when, for 5 days in a row, you made it a habit to stop at a time in your life where you still were beating the shit out of yourself and look yourself in the eyes and either say, I love you, which I know is one of your practices, to look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you. But, to me, one of the powers of the high five habit is there's a lot of people that won't say, I love you. And so the physical action of giving the person in the mirror a high five demonstrates love. And so what did you experience for yourself personally in terms of the science working, the shift in how you started to see the person in the mirror?
Well, transformation doesn't happen without repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at one point, I don't remember if this is in the book, but the idea that there's so many mirrors out there in the world. I mean, you come across a mirror a dozen times a day, potentially.
Yeah.
And I tried that during the challenge. It wasn't just brush teeth in the morning one time. It was whenever I saw a mirror. And I think that's critically important, because this high five thing, this idea, it's not, I know you call it the high five habit, but it's one of those things that it almost feels elusive in terms of becoming habitual. And that's because next week or next year, some shit might go down,
right,
and you might do something, or something happens where you really feel immediately lousy about yourself. And so even though there may be some habit of you getting up saying, I love you, or high-fiving yourself, your life circumstance is going to get in the way.
Right.
Frequently.
Correct. Just like with exercise or drinking your water or getting a good night's sleep. But when you come back to that moment, because for me personally, it's a moment of joining in with myself. It's a moment of partnership with myself. And you used to coach almost all the, teams that our kids played on when they were little, when they're really little. And as a coach, like if you think about when you high five a kid, it's either to congratulate them for something that they did, or it's to help them shake something off and know that there's somebody that believes in them and to get back out there into the game. And for me, whether it's the high five I give myself in the morning after I brush my teeth and the moment I take to look at myself in the mirror, or like you said, I don't always high five myself throughout the day when I see a mirror, but I'll tell you something. I look at myself differently. And I know you do too. And so the importance of this, because it is something that most of us don't do. I think we casually slip into the subconscious where we're beating ourselves up and we're on autopilot. And every time you pass a mirror, you have a chance to look yourself in the eyes and see a person that is worthy of celebrating, of cheering for, of believing in, simply because you're here. That to me is the power of this. What is the power of it for you?
I'm still a little steeped in acknowledging that, yes, I'm here, but not like here physically and how great this is that I'm alive and breathing. Yes, that's all amazing. But when I look in the mirror, it's what I see is I see, I guess I can see the age and the wisdom and the learning more. That I'm more grateful for that, for having been through what I've been through. And so the looking in the mirror and the acknowledging of myself, it's rarely like, okay, you got this, all right, your next meeting or your next whatever.
Maybe it should be.
Maybe, but like I said, I look forward less than I do look back.
Great.
And today in the look back, there's more gratitude and appreciation and a willingness to high five those elements of me, which for so many years I hated.
When you look in the mirror, can you describe the person you see today?
I see a man for who he is. And I see a man with different but the same number of battle scars that every other man, I think, has, in the sense of what I've been through, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I see a man who's worked his ass off, but not necessarily with the right mindset or for the right reasons. Like if there's regret, that's probably the area to dig in for me, is just being able to completely release that. Yeah, whatever, I made that choice for that reason at that time with the tools that I had, right. And that's all I knew. And so I see today, looking in the mirror, somebody that is accepting of those decisions and choices that I made, and even acknowledging the pain and the struggle that I was also blind to. I mean, the idea of sort of coming to terms with having battled depression, I think I was oblivious to that for many years just didn't even occur to me. That might have been part of the resistance too, if you're battling depression, a high five in the mirror definitely feels like the last thing in the world you would ever pursue.
But it's something that you should.
Oh, without a doubt. I see a man I love. I see a man I'm proud of. I see a great father. and I see a great partner to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a man who has accomplished a lot in a short period of time. I see a man who's doing his best and deserves a look in the eye and a high five.
All right. Well, I'll give you one. Oh, my God.
I think one last thing I want to say to the men out there, any man who feels a sense of failure or that they haven't lived up to their own expectations or those outside of them, any man who's been battling with or has battled with addiction or depression or any of these things that drag us down, I strongly encourage you to start with you and to begin with forgiveness. Not always so easy, but without a doubt, I know from my experience, not just me personally, but being in the company of lots of men, that we are all working our ass off to do the right thing. And while we don't always believe that the results live up, it's in the forgiveness and the starting with yourself and the self-acknowledgement.
And I want to go back to what you said in the very beginning, because I know that we're going to get a ton of questions, Chris. Well, how? How do I begin that? One step that you could take today is trying this habit of even just looking yourself in the mirror.
I'm shocked that I'm even saying this, given my initial reaction to the high five habit. But I agree. Start right there. Start in the mirror.
Because if you change the story you're telling yourself about the person you see in the mirror, if you change the actions that you take in how you treat the human being in the mirror, if you change what you're thinking when you look in the eyes of the person in the mirror, that is the beginning of forgiving yourself. Like, you will never forgive yourself if you refuse to look yourself in the eyes with compassion and with forgiveness and with understanding. And one of the reasons why I'm going to keep hammering this, everybody, raise your hand and high five the mirror. Because if you're at a place where you are beating the shit out of yourself and you can't stand yourself for whatever reason, whatever you did, we've all done something, you don't have to change your thoughts. The neurobics and the science of simply making the physical gesture of the high five, Chris, and all of the lifetime of positive programming associated with it, it has a chemical, a neurological, a psychological benefit immediately that is grounded in science. And so the physical act does the work for you, and it starts to plow new neural pathways, and it releases dopamine, all of which will help you do the other work that you need to do to walk down the road of forgiving yourself. But if you got to start by simply looking at yourself in the eyes and seeing somebody who is worthy of forgiving, because you are.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. You could forgive yourself all day long walking down the sidewalk, but that's a futile exercise. The mirror is where it happens, and seeing yourself.
I want to go back to this moment when you're 32 years old, because to your point, you were a practicing psychologist seeing patients in a committed partnership, living in your dreams city, marching through life, yet emotionally shut down. And you use the words that you were emotionally immature. Could you unpack and define what emotional immaturity is? Because when you say that word, I think tantrum, but you also started to talk about shutting down. So, what does emotional immaturity mean, and how do we spot it in ourselves?
Yeah. So the simple way that I would describe emotional immaturity is the inability to be with and process, navigate, regulate our emotions. And again, I'm breaking that into two intentional components because so many of us, that example of being so shut down to my emotions is an example. It doesn't mean, let me sorry, that it doesn't mean that my emotions weren't there. It means that again, in lacking a supportive, attuned caregiver in childhood, the only way that I was able to keep myself safe from that overwhelming feeling that emotions create in our childhood experiences, because we don't know how to tend or to regulate our emotions, created a circumstance where leaving my body, disconnecting my emotional awareness was the way that I could create safety. So for a lot of us, it can look like that shut down, that disconnection. But again, it doesn't mean our emotions aren't there. So being able to be aware of the reality that we're having emotions, they are actually how we register our environment around us. They give us important information or feedback in terms of how safe is this experience. They give us an indication of what direction we need to go in, or if we're having, sadness, they give us an indication of we're experiencing a loss of some sort. There's value, there's information in our emotions. So for some of us, it can look like an inability to be with them to the extent that we suppress them. We keep them so outside of our conscious awareness that we aren't, or we're somewhat aware of them, but we don't allow ourselves to express them. Or for some of us, it's so outside of our conscious awareness that they're repressed beneath the surface. Doesn't mean they're not there. Now, to speak to your point about tantruming, for others, it might mean that we are aware of our emotions and we become them. We explosively react, yelling, screaming. Again, while it might be causing those actions, or those reactions, I should say, might be causing us self-harm, because some of us turn that emotional energy inward and we do or engage in behaviors that actually create harm within ourselves, or we say and do things that hurt other people. And again, in my opinion, all of that is coming from that lack of safety. So the inability to process, deal with, remain responsive, which means note that, okay, I'm having an emotion. I have a bit of space to acknowledge the emotion that I'm having, to remain in choice, to decide what I'm doing next. So we can have a spectrum of emotionally immature behaviors. And again, they all oftentimes date back to, what did we learn in childhood? Who was attuned to us? Was there safety? Were we given the language? Did we have someone who was able to attune and connect with us and bring us from those overwhelming feelings back into a calmer, more balanced state? And when the answer is no, even as we age in developmental years, we still retain those older habits because they're grounded and they're driven by our nervous system's best attempt at creating safety. And we just continue to replicate that, even if we are decades beyond those earliest environments.
I get this visual when I listen to you. And so let me see if I can describe it. Because when I read that quote, let me grab it again, that at 32 years old, I realized I was a child in an adult body. And you were talking about like emotionally immature child in an adult body. One of the biggest realizations for me in terms of your work is that I get this visual where I see myself at like the age of 8 or 9, and my internal emotional development stopped growing at that age. But my body, kept going, and I got bigger and taller, and and I kept aging. And so now, the big healing work for me really started around the age of 47, and it'll never end. So I'm kind of 7 years into this. But I feel like the work of healing is a lot about allowing and doing the work to let the emotional part of you mature into more of an adult. Does that make sense?
Oh, actually, I had a visual of I don't know if you ever seen a picture, I feel like, of a child, and usually it's a child in a suit where it's like a child wearing their father's, suit, and
Yeah.
the arms are hanging down. And that was the visual that immediately popped into mind when you were describing that. And again, I want to honor Mel, sharing this, and all of us who are able to, come and allow that to be the case, because so many of us, we shame ourselves then. We feel like because we are whatever decade that we are living, we feel like we should be doing things differently. And again, back to creating change, we truly have to start where it is that we're at right now. There's nothing shameful about not having had the tools or the safety or the resources, in our earliest environments, and including the reality that many of that is passed on from generations that even have come before us. We now understand the science of epigenetics, that those, who grew up, from lineages where there was stress and trauma are impacted down to the way our cells function, our DNA functions, I should say, from those early environments. So what we're really talking about again is decades of life, of time, of individuals, of circumstances on this earth, even in general, that we're carrying the impact of. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm always talking about the physiology of our mind and our body, and how all of these patterns are transmitted, passed on through generations, in hopes of relieving that shame. Because again, until we see where things are, and when I was sharing, I didn't have the language, and I probably would have fought you tooth and nail in the beginning. Call me emotionally immature. What do you mean? I'm a psychologist. I'm self-aware and I'm emotionally connected, and you're all the problem. People in my life who aren't seeing that, or who aren't giving me the feeling that I'm desperately searching for. I would be lying again if I said that I welcomed this realization, because I didn't. And for a lot of us, again, that creates tension within ourselves as we begin to see more clearly, more consciously, where we're starting from in terms of our emotional age. And it can cause a lot of tension and conflict as these patterns and this awareness maybe is gifted to us by loved ones, people who are a little less subjective than we are to ourselves, and might be gently pointing out these moments of reactivity that, are causing harm in the relationship. And again, having the gift of having had a partner at that time who very gently would try to bring to my awareness in a very loving, compassionate way, which she was starting to see and experience within our relationship. I fought it. I denied it. I blamed her for being not compassionate and not understanding me. So again, back to that celebration point, I'd really want to hammer that in. As difficult as it is to see ourselves clearly in the emotional, age essentially that we're operating in, if we can gift ourselves with that a compassionate awareness that all of this has been impacted again by circumstances that were largely out of our control, then we can create that opportunity to create change. Because the gift of our human brain and body is that it is neuroplastic. It can change throughout our lifetime. So whenever the now is that you begin to see the reality of how old you are emotionally, or whatever it is, the habit and pattern that might be causing impact in your life, that is the age where you can begin to string together those new choices.
One of the reasons why I love you is you have been an expert on the brain and a psychiatrist for 40 years, and you do not focus on what's wrong with us. You literally teach us how to bring out like more awesomeness through brain health. You call it elite brain training. What is that?
Well, a long time ago, I realized I hated the term mental illness. It shames people, it's stigmatizing, and it's wrong. There are brain health issues. And if I can teach you to get your brain healthy, well, your mind is better. People often don't understand that. Your brain, physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And so if you want to be elite, you're already elite. But the people I work with, everybody wants to be better. Nobody wants to be told they're mental. And so the mission I have on the planet is to end the whole concept of mental illness and create this revolution in brain health, which is why I'm so grateful to hang out with you today.
Oh, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but I just was struck by the fact that you distinguished between the brain and the mind? What's the difference between your brain and your mind?
Well, your brain, the physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And people get this mixed up all the time, but you just have to think of someone who has Alzheimer's disease. And if you saw the scans of people with Alzheimer's disease, you see that they're wildly damaged. And then that person is no longer fully that person because their brain has been damaged. Or just take COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People who get COVID in the next 4 months have a 25% chance of having a new onset psychiatric illness because COVID causes inflammation in the brain. And then I was on the Kardashian show recently, and Kendall came to see me, and she's like, after I got COVID, I'm so anxious. But if you look at the physical functioning of her brain, her emotional centers are on fire. And so people really need to know, if you want a healthy mind, the first thing to have is a healthy brain.
And when you say a healthy brain, so that makes sense to me, Dr. N, first of all, especially the Alzheimer's example. It makes sense to me that when the physical structure and functioning of your brain is impacted, of course it has an impact on the state of your mind. And so are you saying that absolutely anybody can improve the physical health of their brain, and that will have an impact on your happiness, your performance, and your mental health?
Everything. And it happens quickly. So for example, if you get better sleep tonight, your mind can be better tomorrow. If you get drunk tonight, your mind's going to be worse tomorrow. And because those both have a direct impact on the physical functioning of your brain.
Wow. Like, it's interesting because you're right. There is so much information and so many conversations out there about mental health, but you have this revolutionary approach of teaching all of us how to take better care of our brain and how to improve our brain itself and how that has a direct impact. So I want to start at the very beginning because, you've been doing this for 40 years. You are, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on the brain. And can you give us just a 101 on the brain and what you want anybody and everybody to know about the brain? And I want you to speak directly, Dr. Amen, to somebody who may be listening who's never thought about this topic before.
So your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. It's the organ of intelligence, character, and every single decision you make. And when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled for whatever reason, you're sadder, sicker, poorer, because your decisions aren't as good. And the very first step in getting a healthy brain is developing a concept I call brain envy. I always say Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I haven't seen it once in 40 years. It's brain envy is what you want. You want to love the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. Today I'm in Miami, but I usually live in Newport Beach, where we have more plastic surgeons than almost anywhere in the world, because people care more about their faces, their breasts, their bellies, and their butts than they do their brain. And that's insane, because it's your brain that makes you attractive. It's your brain that makes you happy. It's your brain that keeps you purposeful, or it's your brain that is the organ of rage. And so getting your brain right is critical. And it's these 3 steps. Brain envy, got to care. avoid anything that hurts it, know the list. And quite frankly, most second graders would get a 90% if you gave them 100 things that hurt their brain. And then the third thing is regularly do things that help it. And I worked with BJ Fogg for 6 months. He runs a persuasive tech lab at Stanford on how people change. And we develop tiny habits. What's the smallest thing you can do today that will make the biggest difference? And the mother tiny habit is whenever you go to do something today, ask yourself, takes 3 seconds. Ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love of yourself, love of your family, love of your mission, you're going to just start making better decisions because you care about the organ that makes you, you.
Wow. All right, let me unpack this. So number one, brain envy is this idea of actually caring about the health of your brain. And so do you recommend that you have somebody in mind that you envy? Like clearly I envy you because you take incredible care of your brain. But is it just this concept that you just actually have to wake up and realize that what's in between your ears is the most important aspect of your health and wellness, period? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And number two, you then said that there are these micro habits that you have developed, one of which is asking yourself literally throughout the day, is this good or bad for my brain? So let me just role play that one real quick. Because you said that like 90% of second graders can answer the question correctly almost all of the time, but we adults get it terribly wrong. So let's just say it's breakfast time. So how do you use this to start to make better choices that help your brain? Like, do you literally go, okay, am I having a cup of coffee or a glass of water? Am I eating like a big piece of toast with tons of butter and all this crap on it? Am I taking my supplements? Like, how does this play out in somebody's day-to-day life, Dr. Amen?
So I used to play a game with my daughter when she was little. Her name is Chloe. And we called it Chloe's Game. And I would say blueberries. And she would say 2 thumbs up, God's candy. And then I would say Frosted Flakes. She'd go, way too much sugar. Or avocados, 2 thumbs up, God's butter. Or hitting a soccer ball with your head. And she would just roll her eyes like brain is soft, skull is hard. That would be so stupid. and so if you think of the standard American diet, sad, almost everything's bad for your brain. From the toast in the morning, to the sugar cereals, to the donuts, to the pastries, to the coffee with sugar and milk in it. No, those things are not great for the health of your brain. But if you did intermittent fasting and you sort of skip breakfast, well, that's good for your brain.
Why is that? Why is intermittent fasting good for the brain?
Because it helps your brain clean up the trash that builds up from the day before. There's a term called autophagy, which is cells start to eat the extra trash that built up the day before. And so if you don't sleep, you don't have enough time for the cleaning crew to come and sort of clean up your brain. Intermittent fasting gives you a little bit more time to do that. So breakfast is marketing, and it's actually not essential. Now, for people who might have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, then breakfast really is important. And kids who have ADD, for example, if they have protein in the morning, their medication lasts longer throughout the day. And when you and I were growing up, things like sausage and eggs were common for breakfast, where now, because everybody's on the run, it's sugar-laden cereals, juice. That was the only thing the second graders got wrong when I tested them. So I gave them a list of 20 things, and I'm like, good for your brain or bad for it. And the only thing they got wrong was orange juice, which they put in the good category, but it's clearly in the bad category. Because when is it rational to have the sugar from 4 oranges? It's not rational.
That's true. It makes a lot of sense. What are 3 micro habits that have the biggest impact on the health of your brain, other than asking yourself, is this good or bad for my brain?
So I start every day with today is going to be a great day. Because once you get the physical functioning of your brain healthy, you then have to program it. And so I knew I was going to talk to you. It's the first thing that came up in my mind. So I start every day. And if you have children, it's really good to do this at breakfast, which is if you have breakfast. So why is today going to be a great day for you? Directing your mind, which for many people, because of evolution, they wake up in a negative state. It puts your brain in a positive state. And then my favorite of all the habits I do is when I go to bed at night, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well today? And I go on a treasure hunt. And I actually start from the very moment I woke up, looking for what was right about the day. And I've done this now 7 or 8 years. And even the night my dad died about 2.5 years ago, and it was an awful, awful day. I did it because it was my habit, right? The brain is lazy. It does what you nudge it to do. And so it really helped me even in a really hard time. But it's almost my favorite time of the day because like you, I'm busy and great things will happen and I'll just not really focus on it. But it's that treasure hunt that is just so good. And then I take my supplements every day because we live in a nutrient deficient society. And I always want to give my brain the nutrition it needs so it can serve me rather than derail me.
Is there one supplement that you believe everybody should take for better brain health?
Well, a couple, multiple vitamin, a really high quality multiple vitamin. I make one called Neurovite Plus. Brand new study showed people with memory problems who were headed to darkness when they took a high quality multiple vitamin, within a matter of months, their memory was better. So,
what?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. So you're saying that a high quality multivitamin can not only improve your memory, but if you're sliding on a slippery slope toward memory loss, research shows that it can actually bring memory back?
Yes, brand new research just came out. They're actually comparing it to placebo and cocoa extract, chocolate. And they were hoping the chocolate would do it. It wasn't the chocolate, it was the multiple vitamin. And why I developed Neurovite like I did, it has the same dosages of B6, B12, and folate that decrease the conversion of mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Now, I never make a disease claim with supplements, but if this level of B6, B12, and folate did that, I'm going to put those levels in our supplements.
Wow, I'm going to start popping it like candy is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that we link to that study and that we link to the supplements that you make as well, just so that people can check it out. That's incredible. So a multivitamin has a huge impact. I hear a lot about fish oil too.
And that would be number 2. I did a study at Amen Clinics and we found 98% of people had suboptimal levels of omega-3 fatty acids unless they were supplementing, because we don't have the same level of fish consumption we had before. Plus, fish is tricky. Brand new study out of Florida International University, so not very far from where I am today. They looked at bonefish off the coast of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
On average, they had 7 pharmaceutical medications in their tissues. And I'm like, no way. And the most common were antidepressants. So as humans, excrete the medications they take into, waste plants, that gets out into the ocean. And then the fish we eat are impacted by them in a negative way.
Wow.
So one reason I like high quality fish oil, because it's purified, especially ours, but also omega-3 fatty acids have been found to be good for your heart, good for your brain, good for your hair, good for your skin, good for your eyes.
Why is it good for the brain?
25% of the nerve cell membranes in your brain are made up of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're deficient, your brain is not going to work as fast and efficiently as it could. And low levels have been associated with all sorts of bad things, from depression to dementia to ADHD.
I'm going to sprint out of this interview and go get these supplements.
So you're in a relationship and you've spent the last couple months really working on yourself, right? You've been going to the gym, you've been reading all these incredible books, you got a gratitude journal. Maybe you're even about to launch your own business. And so you're growing and you're happy, and yet there's a major problem. And the problem is that the person that you're in love with, they're not interested in personal development at all. What do you do? What do you do when you're growing and the person that it might be the most important person in your life isn't growing with you? It's a huge problem, a huge problem. And I want to break it apart for you, because this is not something that is going to get fixed overnight. And it's something that you can have a direct impact on. And it's also something that can become very serious. So I want you to pay attention. First of all, you got to understand, you cannot change somebody else. You can bitch at them, you can threaten them, you can guilt them, but at the end of the day, it is up to the person that you're with to decide whether or not he or she is going to change. That said, you can do things that influence whether or not they want to. And so the most important thing with personal development, now remember, what's the key word in personal development? It's personal, is you continue to do you. You continue to read the books. You continue to hang out with the people that inspire you. You continue to push your life forward. You continue to go to the gym. And the thing that you're going to do is you're going to share a lot with your partner. You're going to share about what you're learning. You're going to share about who you're hanging out with. You're going to share about all these cool distinctions and tools that you're learning. You're going to share about the things that scare you. You're going to open up in a way that impacts your relationship. The thing you're not going to do is you're not going to tell them they have to do it too. Because the second that you tell somebody to do something, they're going to say no. You may invite them, hey, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so. You want to come? You can ask them if they'd be interested in reading things. You can ask them questions, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to tell them what to do, because it's going to totally backfire. I remember in 1994 when I first met my husband, Chris, he was taking this personal development course, and I honest to God thought he had joined a cult. I mean, I literally was like, oh my God, I met the man of my dreams. Now the dude is like in a cult. And I remember going to his graduation for the weekend program, and everybody was smiling and wearing name tags, and it was totally irritating, and I was threatened. And here's the thing that's interesting. So let me give you some insight on what may be going on for the person that doesn't want to grow with you. I was really confronted. I was really confronted by what I might learn about myself if I took the same course he took. I was also scared that something would change between us. And so it wasn't that I wasn't interested in growing as a person, it was that I was terrified of the process of doing it, and I was scared of what might get revealed inside of me if I started to change or started to look at myself. So I instead did what a lot of people do. Oh, it's stupid, it's a cult, that's for dumb, I'm not into that kind of thing. Well, what happened is over the course of kind of 3 months, as I was dating Chris and as he was kind of taking these personal development courses, I noticed such a shift in him.
and such a shift in our relationship that I started to become more and more interested in doing the course too. And so it's important for you to make the invitation. It's important for you to ask if they'd ever want to do it. It's important for you to continue to extend the bridge, but don't ever tell somebody that they have to do it, with one exception. If you've done everything that you possibly can to improve yourself, and you're with somebody that's behaving in a way that's destructive or that is degrading you, or that is crossing boundaries that are personal boundaries or safety boundaries, you are 100% within your right to tell somebody that in order to be in the relationship with you, they have to do work on those particular issues. Because that's no longer about personal development, it's about the development of your relationship together. So if somebody says no when they're crossing boundaries, or when there's something about how they're treating you that doesn't work for you, then you need to get out of the relationship. Because it's no longer about somebody growing with you, it's about you being in a relationship with somebody who is actively doing things to hurt you, to cross boundaries, to make you miserable, and they have zero respect for you because they are not willing to address it. So again, personal development is personal. You can't make somebody change. You need to focus on what you're doing, but make sure you share your journey. Make sure you continue to make the invitation. Don't punish the person when they say no. But if boundaries start to get crossed, if they start to be abusive or destructive or annoying. I mean, Chris, for example, also loves to backcountry ski, something I don't really like to do. So I support him in going, but I don't participate. If I were the kind of person that wouldn't allow him to do it, that was snarky whenever he did it, that would be crossing a line. Then he is allowed to make requests. So remember, personal development is about you personally growing. And the cool thing about personally growing is that as you grow, if you're in the right relationship, eventually the person will come around and want to grow with you. They'll be supportive of what you're doing. That's how they're growing. But when it becomes a situation where you're with somebody that's destructive about what you're doing, that's a major red flag that you need to deal with.
We spend so much time twisting ourselves in knots about unimportant things. And we just talked about how hideous, I'll use the word hideous, because I literally looked hideous. I mean, I not only had a tomato red face and like crazy witch hair and foggy glasses and bad breath and impacted sinuses and probably throwing in a camel toe in there too. I didn't have anything tied around my waist. But not giving a shit about that is very liberating, because otherwise I'd be embarrassed by my own existence walking down the sidewalk. And I would twist myself in knots, worrying about what do I look like and how red is my face? Is my face coming down? And maybe I should go back to the hotel and take a shower and get this makeup off my face and blow my nose before I get a cup of coffee. And all of that energy, twisting myself around what other people may be thinking, rather than just being okay, not giving a shit. It's so liberating. And I think about that example of for how long I was willing to twist myself into little spaces that didn't fit, and how painful it can be when you hide who you are, when you're embarrassed about what you look like, when you worry about what other people think about what you're wearing. And yet it's also the flip side is when you give a shit about the right things, twisting yourself into spaces like a small tent is an act of joy because it's aligned with what you value. I didn't give a shit how small that little hole was. I had to army crawl my ass in there in order to get in. And then I had to swirl around like a centipede to curl up in there like a little ball, because it was so aligned with my values of wanting to serve, of wanting to bring fun, of wanting to demonstrate something, which was enthusiasm and surprise and celebration and not giving a shit, like being willing to do that kind of stuff. And so, as we kind of continue to go deeper in all these examples of how I'm oblivious at times and how I've worked actually really hard to get to this point of acceptance and this point of focusing on caring about things that I value and trying to completely disregard aspects of life that I just don't give a shit about. That visual of the tent and why it's important to twist yourself when it's about your values versus twisting yourself when it's not, that's really helpful to see. Did I do anything else that day?
Probably.
Probably is probably the right answer, but I don't have any specifics.
Me neither.
And if anyone
I
does.
do. Botox.
Oh,
Oh my
God.
gosh.
So I got Botox, everybody, in my jaw joint, and I've been going to the same dermatologist for over a decade. I love her. I trust her. She's sensational, and I've been having tremendous pain in my jaw, grinding, trouble eating, and both my primary and my dermatologist was like, you got to get Botox in your jaw. And when she felt my jaw, she's like, holy shit, that's a tense muscle. You're going to have a little extra. And I'm like, okay, as long as you make the pain go away. And she said, well, it could impact your smile. I'm like, I don't care. I can't eat at this point. Just take the pain away. Well, she shot me up. And let me tell you something. It impacted my smile. I look like I'm taking a shit when I have a smile. And this is something that I am self-conscious about. So all week long, as we're in Los Angeles and we did a bunch of interviews, I'm having to really try to like manage that my lips are curling up, because if I do a closed smile, try to lip smile like you keep your mouth smiled, my lips suck in like our body language expert warned us about. What's that called?
Lip roll.
A lip roll. I do a lip roll and it looks like I'm frowning. And then if I try to do a big toothy smile, I look like I'm grinding out of shit. Like I'm like, clenching. And so I had to tell every single expert we had. Now look, I'm going to give a kissy face in this, because if I try to give you a smile, I'm going to look like I'm growling at you. And so I now have a week's worth of photos from both graduation week and the podcast where I'm kissing experts and kissing in the air, and I look completely ridiculous. But at least I can chew food and the pain has gone away, but I'm never getting Botox in my jaw again.
But right now, you don't give a shit.
I don't, but it bothers me a little, but I'm trying to direct my attention away from how I look and just go, Mel, it looks like shit, but whatever. What was the CNN story?
Exactly what you said. Can I read to you what some people said to you on CNN?
Wait, you have it?
I do.
Oh my God. She went back in time.
I think a lot of it you remembered, but this is pretty brutal. I have 4 outstanding comments. Let's say that. Your neck is saggy, just like your opinions. It's funny now, but you were probably like, when you got that, right? Like that was probably
it really hurt in the beginning.
Yeah, probably
it
hurt.
Sure did.
You should go back to the hole you crawled out of.
It was a deep hole.
Now we know you're an expert on crawling
Out of
into
holes.
small spaces. Yes.
Yep.
Why is someone so ugly on television?
Ouch.
Nice.
Because I'm smarter than you, fuckface.
Okay. The last one. How does a moron like you have a law degree?
I cheated. That's
That's how to not give a shit.
Well, you know how I learned how to not give a shit is I started to visualize. Empathy helps a lot. So, couple things on other people's opinions. Number one, let's just take a minute and zoom out and have some perspective and imagine what is the life of a person who is sitting on their phone, watching TV nonstop, sounding off at pundits online. What does their life actually look like? I would imagine hypertension. I would imagine a lot of negativity. I'm going to throw in a little alcohol or drug abuse. Probably a small circle of friends. Not getting a lot of sex, I would imagine. Perhaps living in your parents' basement. I would think your bills are piled sky high if that's how you're spending your time. If you truly spend time sounding off at strangers online, your life sucks. Mm-hmm. And so feeling sorry for somebody that cuts you off in traffic, or even like the mean girls. Mean girls are shitty people. You know how insecure they are? If you need a fucking purse and a designer whatever in order to have high self-esteem, you are really fucking insecure. And so I kind of just look at people that are critical of other people, even though I'm being critical of other people, you know, for the sake of humor, with a lot of sympathy. Like, wow, must really suck for you to watch TV and feel so offended or triggered by what I'm saying that you are taking time and energy to not only write about it, but to spread negativity. That's a really awful place to live your life. I hope you find a good therapist at some point and you get the healing you deserve. And so kind of understanding the greater context and not making it about you. Like, I really mean that. Like, I think about like lots of experiences of just mean cliques of people and how they look down on other people. And I literally say to myself, I would hate to be part of that friend group. And one rule of thumb that I think about a lot is this. Like, I think small minds talk about other people. And really cool, big, creative minds talk about ideas. They talk about things. They talk about the future. And that's what I'm interested in. And so when you kind of make it not so personal, that helps a lot. Mm. And when you elevate yourself above the kind of pettiness and the criticism and the negativity that other people might throw at you, it helps me rise above it. And the truth is, you know, there are days I look like shit. And there are days that I probably look like I shouldn't be on TV. And you know what? I don't give a shit. So it helps a lot. It helps a lot because it's mentally healthy to be able to detach. And a lot of your mental health struggles, whether it's anxiety or disconnection or paranoia, it's all a result in many, many, many cases of you being way too concerned about shit out of your control and way too focused on stories that you're telling yourself that aren't even true. And so if anybody's out there gossiping about me, you need to get better hobbies. You really do. If, you know, you're looking down on other people, or notice the next time you go into a social setting and notice how much time is spent talking about people who aren't there. Mm. If that's what's happening in your social setting and it's not a structured conversation around you seeking advice about a situation, which is very different than gossiping. You can seek advice about a situation with another person in your personal life, in your family, or in business, and not have it be gossiping. But if you're engaged in constant banter about other people who aren't present, you need bigger goals. You need to do more with your life, and you need to assess, like, who you're hanging out with, because when they gossip with you, they're going to gossip about you when you leave. That's what those kind of people do. And so it helps to not gossip yourself, because I think gossip is one of those things that you also start giving a shit about things that don't matter. Like, because gossiping is caring about shit that doesn't matter. And I don't think very successful people or accomplished artists or the greatest entrepreneurs are wasting time giving a shit about gossiping about other people. And I used to be a big gossiper. I can say this with certainty because I used to be that insecure, desperate, clingy, anxious, competitive bitch. And I'm not that person anymore. And gossiping was a big thing in my 20s. It is not part of my life anymore at all. The honest answer is that I think it wasn't until I discovered the high five habit that I profoundly realized how much self-hatred I was dealing with. Mm. And
despite everything else, yeah.
Well, and this I think is a really big piece of the power of this, especially if you're somebody who's achievement oriented, and everybody that listens to this podcast feels a big calling and wants to do more in the world and make a bigger difference and a bigger impact. There's a real danger that's very common, Jay, that you start to marry, or you've always married, being worthy or lovable with what you're doing and what you're achieving.
And it works both ways in terms of if you don't have the number on the scale, it means, again, the dust on the mirror. You are not worthy because you haven't achieved it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us that have achieved some things that we've set out to do, what happens is you find that as soon as you achieve the thing, you actually need to do something else.
Bigger,
better, because it was a thing that you achieved that made you lovable or worthy. And the real trick, and this is everything, is being able to know and feel in your bones that you are lovable and worthy just because you're breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge breakthrough for me.
Yeah.
And so, no, I never celebrated because I think I was so married to this idea that unless I'm doing or winning or achieving, and it happens so subtly when you're little because you start to get so much positive praise when you get a good grade or when you do something at school or when you make your mates laugh or whatever it might be, that you start to go, oh, that's what love feels like. Oh, if I do that. And so you outsource love and validation to outside things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to tell you, we all got to learn how to bring it back home
Mm-hmm.
and anchor the validation and love that you need where you are right now every single day. And it's only in discovering this that I had to confront just how much I was beating myself up, just how much I was tearing myself down, and how I was chasing these things. Because what I actually wanted was to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask yourself, okay, great, you want to make $1 million. Why? There's a feeling that you're looking for from that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can start to work on bringing that feeling into your day-to-day life for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
it changes the way that you go about achieving things. Like I didn't even enjoy half the stuff that I did because I was constantly maniacally focused on the things that weren't working rather than the 100 things that were. And the same is true with everybody's day. You don't even know the number of amazing things you do every day. You feed the dog, high five. You got the kids to school, high five. You read 10 pages of the book, high five. You said a nice thing to a stranger, high five. You got something done at work, high five. You got through 70% of your inbox, high five. Instead, you focus and ruminate on the one thing you didn't get to, and then you use that as evidence, again, dust on the mirror, to see a human being that's not measuring up and never will, and all that stuff their stupid 4th grade teacher said to you must be true, dust on the mirror. No, you need to interrupt this, period. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.